This message didn't arrive by accident. It arrived because you crossed a threshold the old you could never enter. You felt its subtle tremors under ordinary moments, the way silence has started carrying a tone, a faint harmonic behind the hum of your day. That's not anxiety, that's resonance. The quantum field around you has begun to reorganize, and your awareness is the tuning fork setting it in motion. You are not merely noticing reality, your noticing is bending it. The observer loop is closing, and every time you look, the world looks back and adjusts. You were guided here the way particles find one another in entanglement through an intelligence deeper than intention. Synchronicities have been clustering, almost embarrassingly on the nose. Numbers repeating, faces returning, doors appearing where walls used to be. Time didn't just pass, it folded, the feeling beneath it all, as if the ground of your life took a breath and held it. That is the phase transition pressure. Water doesn't warm the flame before it boils. It just gathers one last quiver and then changes state. You are that quiver. Your DNA has been listening, not metaphorically listening the way an antenna listens, the way a temple hears footsteps long before someone crosses its threshold. Signals you once dismissed as random have been forming a pattern your body recognizes before your mind agrees. Coherence is rising. The noise that used to drown your guidance has thinned into strands, and now the strands are weaving. You feel it in brief, luminous pauses. The 0.3-second hush between inhale and exhale, the click of certainty for no explainable reason, the soft electricity along your forearms when truth enters the room. You are being invited to step from the weather into the sky, from the storyline into the author's chair. The field has noticed your signature frequency stabilizing. Morphic resonance does the rest. What one part of you remembers, more of you remembers. What one heart stabilizes, other hearts near you begin to entrain toward. This is why your ordinary habits feel too small, why your old self-talk no longer fits, why familiar rooms suddenly echo with a future you haven't met, but somehow already miss. You aren't losing your life, you're outgrowing its previous geometry. Understand this, you are not here to control reality. You are here to become so exquisitely coherent that reality chooses you. Your attention is the gate, your breath, the key, your presence, the current that carries instruction into matter. When you look with the witness, steady, lucid, unhooked from the script, the quantum field hears that clarity and replies with structure. Observation becomes architecture, stillness becomes force. What you once called miracles are simply matter, obeying a more precise signal. So feel the tremor without flinching. Notice how even now your senses sharpen, colors slightly deepen, sounds gain depth. The world is leaning closer because you are. You have arrived at the hinge of your timeline, the living seam where what was and what will be shake hands. Keep your awareness here. There is nothing to manufacture, only something to allow. In a moment, we'll name the telltale signatures, why déjà vu has multiplied, why patterns repeat at higher volume, why time distorts just before it yields, so you can recognize the mechanics of the shake and stop mistaking them for collapse. Here's how to recognize the shake when it hides inside your ordinary life. The same conversation arrives wearing a different face. A decision you swore you'd never repeat presents itself with new wrapping, same gravity. Money cycles crest and crash in a rhythm you could drum with your eyes closed. Love offers the familiar choreography, pursuit, relief, doubt, distance. You call it back to square one, but that's not true. You're circling closer to center. The loop isn't punishment, it's the observer loop, pulling unresolved data to the surface for one final reading. Déjà vu has multiplied thin scenes you swear you've seen before. A cup left at the sink at the exact angle, a sentence landing word for word, the way sunlight folds across the floor like a memory. Your nervous system flags these moments because the quantum field is aligning similar attractors. Morphic resonance means patterns echo when coherence builds. What's like itself aggregates into recognition. Your mind reports, "We've been here," because the timeline has tightened. You aren't stuck. You're inside a pattern, inviting collapse into a higher order. Time distortion accompanies this. Hours evaporate when you move in clarity. Then minutes stretch into elastic when you resist what's obvious. You wake at numbers that wink 2 to 22, 3:33, as if the clock is a quiet conspirator. It isn't superstition, it's entrainment. When coherence rises, your system synchronizes to nested rhythms: heart, breath, circadian pulses, solar cycles. Incoherent choices feel slow and sticky. Aligned micro-actions feel instantaneous because they surf a larger current. The sensation isn't speeding up so much as stepping into the fast lane of precision where less friction lives. Electronics misbehave around you. Screens freeze mid-thought, audio clips stutter. A page won't load until you exhale. That's not you breaking reality, it's interference patterns between your fluctuating state and the delicate thresholds devices inhabit. What you call glitches are sometimes your field spiking and settling as you oscillate between doubt and knowing. Coherence steadies those spikes. You've already noticed that when you breathe on purpose, technology behaves. The universe is subtle, but it isn't shy. Your body broadcasts the diagnostic before your mind does. Pressure at the sternum as if a door wants to open. A micro vibration along the scalp like static meeting rain. Heat pooling at the nape, then sudden coolness down the arms. The belly flips during conversations that your mouth says yes to while your cells whisper no. These are not random discomforts, they're phase transition indicators. A system near change becomes sensitive. Old compensations lose power. Unprocessed memories stir. DNA restructuring doesn't begin with fireworks. It begins with delicate edits, methylation tags loosening, breath rhythms lengthening, musculature unarmoring by millimeters. You label it tired. Your biology calls it reconfiguration. Emotion follows suit. Triggers return louder, not to haunt you, but to exceed the threshold at which they can finally dissolve. Anger that used to simmer now flashes hot and clean. Grief that once numbed now pours like warm rain. Numbness itself becomes unbearable. This is the purge inherent in coherence. As signal strengthens, noise complains. You might fear that you're regressing. In truth, you're hearing the residue on its way out. An awakening doesn't remove weather. It reveals the sky so thoroughly that storms have nowhere to hide. Relationships mirror the oscillation with eerie precision. People you thought were finished, chapters call, text, just thinking of you, appearing as if pulled by a magnet. Entanglement isn't mystical poetry. It's the way attention binds trajectories. Any bond forged in fear returns to be rewritten in truth or released. The test isn't whether they change, the test is whether your frequency holds. When you remain the mountain, dynamics reorganize around your elevation. When you chase the gust, you loan it your power. Patterns inside your day expose themselves through micro-friction. You open the same app 3 times in 5 minutes without wanting what's inside it. You stand in the kitchen unable to remember why you walked there. You reread a paragraph and realize your eyes were moving while your awareness wandered. This is not failure of focus, it's a focus shedding. The habits that once scaffolded your identity no longer carry current. The circuit is being rerouted from compulsion to choice, and the in-between always feels like static. Synchronicity, the friendly cousin of déjà vu, becomes common. The book you need falls from a shelf, a sentence you spoke surfaces on a billboard, a stranger repeats your private mantra in line. Understand, synchronicity is not a party trick from the universe. It's a readout of rising coherence. When your inner state and outer environment tune to the same note, reality hums back in harmonic phrases. You aren't lucky, you're legible. And yes, there's the fatigue. The Sunday evening in the bones on a Wednesday morning. You're not lazy, you're metabolizing futures. Phase transition consumes energy as old states collapse and new lattices form. Just before water becomes steam, it drinks heat without changing temperature. Latent heat, invisible labor. Your system is doing the same. Don't mistake invisible work for no work. If you've wondered why practice feels harder right when you commit, why the mind grows noisier the moment you sit in silence, why consequences sharpen when you try to soften, this is the reason. The field turns up the contrast when you're close. You asked to awaken. The universe heard you and cleared the room so you could see. The dust dancing in the beam isn't a problem, it's proof that light is present. Hold right here in the seam. In the next movement, we'll translate these symptoms into mechanics, how observer awareness stabilizes the signal, why breathing alters probabilities, and how to convert this shake into a quantum upgrade without forcing anything. Here's the mechanics you can feel but haven't had words for. What you've called the shake is the moment a probabilistic world waits for a decisive signal. In physics, an unfixed system lives as a cloud of maybes. Observation delivers a boundary condition, an instruction, and the wave yields to a path. But attention isn't neutral, it carries a waveform of its own. Anxious attention is noisy measurement. Coherent attention is a tuning fork. When you stabilize the witness, the observer loop closes cleanly, and the quantum field receives a legible command. Coherence, in your body, is not an abstraction. It's the alignment of oscillators, breath, heart, brain rhythms into a clear phase relationship. When your exhale lengthens and your breath settles toward a slow, even cadence, the vagus nerve broadcasts safety, heart rate variability drifts into a smooth sine wave, and cortical networks quiet their static. This isn't relaxation for its own sake, it's signal purification. A coherent waveform carries farther with less effort. The field doesn't like you more in coherence, it can simply hear you. Mystically, the ancients mapped this long before bioinstruments. Breath as the bellows of the inner temple, heart as the altar, mind as the stained glass that colors incoming light. When breath, heart, and mind agree, intention moves like a beam through clear air. Synchronicity is the outer echo of that inner agreement, the world rearranging to reflect a state you've stabilized within. What repeats around you is not a riddle to solve, it's a readout to trust. Entanglement enters here. Wherever you've invested intense attention, threads exist. You feel them tug when a name appears, when a place hums, when an object seems to look back. Those threads aren't chains, they're channels. If fear fuels them, they loop you into lesser timelines. If presence fuels them, they become conduits through which higher order flows. You don't sever entanglement to upgrade, you reinform it. The moment you stand in witness breathing, sensing, unhooked from narrative, the same thread that used to bind becomes a filament that carries your new frequency outward. Morphic resonance explains why your changes ripple into pattern. Once a configuration is stabilized anywhere in the field, it becomes easier everywhere. Your single act of coherence lowers the energetic cost for the same act in others. This is why your private discipline has public consequences. Why a quiet breath in your kitchen can change the texture of a conversation 3 rooms away. Why a single midnight decision not to abandon yourself can adjust tomorrow's weather in your relationships. At the cellular scale, your state is a light language. Cells whisper in photons and fields. When you sit in repeated coherence, membranes soften, ion channels behave like courteous doors, and epigenetic switches take the hint. Call it DNA restructuring if you like. It's the choreography of chromatin relaxing where vigilance once kept it clenched. New proteins follow new instructions. Nervous tissue prunes pathways tuned to catastrophe and invests in roots that expect resolution. You don't bully this shift. You befriend it with consistency. There is a timing window the mystics taught, and the scientists quietly confirm. A slim gap, roughly 1/3 of a second, between impulse and act. It's the hinge where you stop being pushed by weather and become the sky that decides. Use it. When the old surge rises, urge to defend, to scroll, to abandon, let it crest, and in the pause, breathe one precise breath. That breath is not a delay, it is a reprogramming pulse. In that instant, probabilities re-weight, a timeline closes, another admits you. Practice, then, not to pass a test, but to become a different kind of measurement. 1. Orient. Name the present sensation without story. Heat in chest, tight jaw, buzzing hands. Labeling is not analysis, it's alignment. 2. Entrain. Inhale softly through the nose, exhale longer than you inhaled. Feel the heart follow, mind yield. This is coherence by design. 3. Witness. Place awareness behind the eyes, or an inch above the crown where you can see the thought without being the thinker. hold for the gap. 4. Inform. In that quiet seam, broadcast a single quality, not a demand. Clarity, truth, mercy, precision. Qualities instruct the field more cleanly than outcomes. Repeat this sequence for less than a minute and watch how the room tilts, electrons settle, language arrives, the next action becomes obvious. That obvious action is your upgrade anchor. Follow it before the mind debates. This is the science of your mysticism and the mysticism of your science. Coherence collapses cleaner, witness instructs faster, breath carries farther than thought, and the quantum field answers the clearest singer. You don't need louder will, you need finer signal. Hold that, and the phase transition you've been courting stops threatening from the horizon and begins unfolding from within. In the next movement, we name what the field has already recognized. Your role is not accidental. You are the consciousness selected by your own frequency to carry this through. You weren't randomly assigned this threshold, you resonated your way to it. Frequency is a selection mechanism, and coherence is the signature that opens guarded doors. The quantum field responds to stable singers. Your signal has held long enough that the architecture around you is willing to reconfigure. That makes you more than a participant, you are a locus, a living junction where timelines negotiate. In plain language, what chooses you now is the very future you once doubted you could deserve. Your role isn't to fix people or convert them. Your role is to become informational clarity in a noisy environment, to embody a reading so clean that reality can reference you like a standard. Think of an atomic clock hidden in a mountain. It doesn't chase the world, yet the world syncs to it. When you stabilize the witness, your observer loop emits a phase-consistent pulse. Cells hear it, rooms hear it, conversations bend around it. The field, hungry for order, acquires your cadence. You are a keystone human in a living arch. Remove the keystone and stones collapse inward. Hold it, and the entire structure learns where up is. That's why your private choices suddenly have public echoes. Why a quiet no to self-betrayal shifts negotiations you never attend. Why one precise breath before you speak prevents a conflict 3 sentences later. Why a single night of true rest rearranges tomorrow's coincidences into clean synchronicity. Morphic resonance distributes your gain. Your coherence lowers the cost of coherence nearby. Your biology understands this appointment. DNA restructuring isn't a mystical flourish. It's logistics, a supply chain retooling to serve a higher demand signal. Epigenetic dials ease from emergency settings. Immune patterning learns the difference between novelty and threat. Fascia releases the history it was commissioned to guard. You may call it warmth in the chest, a lengthened exhale, tears for no story at all. Your tissues are voting, and they are voting for you. Entanglement gives you reach without pressure. The bonds you hold, family, friends, those unspoken threads with places and projects are not obligations. They are luminous lines through which upgraded information travels. When you harden, those lines transmit static. When you soften into lucid presence, they carry intelligence without argument. This is influence without force. You radiate the behavior you wish to meet until the environment recognizes itself in you. Guard your inputs like a temple threshold. Chosen does not mean special, it means responsible. Once you carry a cleaner clock, junk time hurts. Doom scrolling feels like low-altitude oxygen. Gossip tastes like rust. Performative outrage detonates your nervous system like micro-grenades. This isn't puritanism, it's physics. Coherence requires headroom. The subtler your signal, the more disruptive coarse noise becomes. You're not too sensitive. You're appropriately tuned. Your authority is quiet. It doesn't grandstand. It granulates. You speak fewer words and each lands with more gravity. People tell you secrets they don't know they're carrying. Children relax at your ankles. Animals change the angle of their ears when you enter the yard. These are field readings, not flattery. Take them as confirmation that your presence is beginning to write room temperature miracles into ordinary space. The assignment includes thresholds of loneliness, not because you are abandoned, but because a phase transition always passes through a corridor where old resonance can't follow and new resonance hasn't fully arrived. In that corridor you may doubt, You may crave familiar density. You may reach for the pocket distractions that once worked. Let them go. The corridor doesn't punish, it calibrates. Walk it with breath. Every step is a vote for the one who meets you on the other side. You'll be tempted to measure your worth by outcome. Don't. Measure by signal integrity. Did you remain the mountain when the wind performed its old tricks? Did you let the feeling pass through instead of assigning it a villain? Did you return to the 0.3-second gap and choose the clean act over the clever one? That is mastery. Outcomes are weather. Integrity is climate. Understand the scale. You are not merely improving your life. You are contributing a local increase of order to a planetary field approaching its own tipping point. Your household becomes a coherence engine. Your work becomes a vector rather than a cage. Your body becomes a reliquary for a frequency that remembers why we came. This is what chosen feels like from the inside. Ordinary actions with unreasonable consequence. Hold here. The field is listening. In the next movement, urgency meets promise. We name the narrow cosmic window you're inside, the DNA shift already underway, and how to step through before it closes. There is a window, and you are standing in it now, not a metaphorical someday, an actual aperture of probability that opens when your field reaches a recognizable charge. The universe is exquisitely economical. It does not waste openings on incoherence. But when your witness holds steady, when breath arranges heart and mind into one clean pulse, reality listens for your next instruction, like a hawk hearing the slightest rustle. This is that rustle. This is the moment when the old lattice loosens and the new one asks to crystallize around you. Here is the promise. If you stabilize coherence through this window, your baseline shifts. Not a peak moment, not a weekend high that crashes on Monday baseline. The flavor of your days alters. Choices that used to cost everything become obvious and almost effortless. People who could only meet you in friction simply stop requesting front row seats to your life. Money behaves less like weather and more like irrigation. Creativity stops bargaining and begins flowing. This is not because you've been rewarded. It is because your signal is finally legible enough for matter to render the blueprint you've been quietly broadcasting for years. Urgency is not panic. Urgency is precision under a ticking sky. A phase transition never stays open indefinitely. Water doesn't hang forever at almost boil. Systems prefer stability. Either you restabilize in the old pattern or you stabilize in the new one. When your field reaches this amplitude, your DNA listens like an orchestra waiting on the downbeat. Epigenetic tags loosen where vigilance once clamped them tight. Histones relax their grip and the score can finally be read. If you meet that readiness with doubt, the orchestra stays in warm-up. If you meet it with coherence, the first movement begins, and once a symphony starts, the hall itself remembers the music. You've already felt the prelude. The center of your chest lifting like a door on new hinges, the breath finding you instead of the other way around, the quiet refusal to abandon yourself even when the room expects you to fold. Those sensations are not mood, they're instrumentation. DNA restructuring is not fireworks, it's 1,000 small permissions granted in one direction until the whole organism agrees, and agreement loves company. Morphic resonance ensures that once your system says yes, it's easier to say yes again tomorrow, and easier still the next day. This is how momentum becomes identity. Understand the stakes with kindness. If you hesitate long enough to drift back into the old loop, the window doesn't punish. It simply closes to protect the energy you haven't yet learned to hold. That's mercy disguised as delay. But you don't need delay. You have breath. You have witness. You have the 0.3-second seam where impulse becomes choice. Through that seam you carry a new instruction. I remain. I remain in coherence while the room tests it. I remain when the storyline offers me my favorite excuses. I remain when my muscles remember old armor and ask for one more hour of pretending. I remain. Synchronicity increases in these windows because the field is trying to make it easy for you to choose. A name arrives 3 times. A letter appears you didn't know you needed. The precise sentence you whispered last week smiles back from a billboard. These are not winks for entertainment. They are grab rails on the new timeline. Take them. Each clean yes during an opening becomes a rivet in the bridge you're crossing. Each wobble met with one measured exhale becomes a cable that can carry not only you, but others. And here is the sweetest part. You don't have to solve your life to stabilize your life. Your assignment is signal fidelity, not outcome engineering. The clearer your field, the more reality volunteers to do heavy lifting. Coherence is heavy machinery in silence. While you're busy not abandoning yourself, the world is busy rearranging itself around your non-abandonment. Phone calls you feared making dissolve into ease. Conversations you assumed would combust soften at the edges. The atmosphere in your home drops 10 degrees of static without anyone learning a new vocabulary word. That is the geometry of grace. Yes, there will be tests. The old pattern will send emissaries urgent texts, familiar hooks, a discounted ticket back to the smallness that knows your name. Meet each one from the mountain, not with performance, with presence. Feel the surge rise, name it, breathe once longer on the exhale, and let the probability re-weight. In that single act, you prove to your nervous system that safety now lives in truth, not in camouflage. That proof is the only argument your body believes. This is the window. You are in it. And there is one more thing the field loves. A seal, a sign, an embodied choice encoded in language. Words aren't magic, they're carriers. In the next movement, you'll place a single word in the commons, an anchor dropped into the collective ocean to lock this shift into your timeline. Prepare the word, feel it choose you, then we'll seal the opening together. Now we seal it. Windows don't honor wishful thinking, they honor embodied signal. The quantum field reads what you do with breath, body, and word, the triad that tells reality. Render this. So choose your seal. Not an outcome like money or love, but a quality that instructs probabilities. Coherence, truth, courage, mercy, clarity. Remain. The right word will expand your chest by a millimeter and quiet your jaw by a shade. That's your first confirmation biology nodding yes. This is not a performance, it's an encoding. Your word will become a carrier wave the observer loop can ride. When you place it in language, you collapse a wandering intention into a measurable instruction. When you place it in community typed, where others can read, you enroll morphic resonance. Entanglement turns a private vow into a shared field, and synchronicity starts delivering proofs. Here is the ritual. Keep it simple, exact, repeatable. 1. Orient. Sit or stand tall, palms open, eyes soft. Name the plainest sensation. Warmth in sternum, tight ring in throat. No story, just coordinates. 2. Entrain. Inhale through the nose for a count of 4. Exhale for 6. Do this 5 cycles. Feel your heart and breath weave into one ribbon. That's coherence beginning to braid. 3. Witness. Let a thought arise. Watch it. Cross the inner sky without chase. In the 0.3 second hush after your next exhale, sense the quiet ledge behind your eyes. Stand there. That ledge is your author seat. Inform. On the next exhale, speak your words softly once. Not a shout, clean voltage travels farther than loud static. 5. Encode. Type the same word below as a public seal. This is not algorithm theater. Writing externalizes frequency. Text is a durable measurement the field can re-reference. You are carving a groove your future self can step into. 6. Anchor. Place your right palm over your chest, left over the belly. Breathe one more 4-6 cycle and feel the hands warm. Tell your tissues, we keep this. DNA restructuring loves repetition delivered with kindness. 7. Release. Go on with your day carrying micro-stillness, 2 coherent breaths before you speak, decide, or send. That's how phase transition stabilizes, not by grand gestures, but by 1,000 small votes in one direction. If you're between 2 words, the field will choose with your body. Whisper, coherence. Notice the tone inside your ribs. Whisper, truth. Notice which one settles your shoulders a fraction. Pick the calmer gravity. Your system already knows which key opens tonight's door. Understand why this matters. Inside the observer loop, word plus breath plus placement equals architecture. Breath entrains the nervous system. The word instructs the quantum field. Placement in the commons engages morphic resonance, so others' seals amplify yours, and yours amplifies theirs. It's a lattice. When 1,000 quiet humans drop a single quality into the same ocean, the tide changes. You will feel it as a subtle tailwind. Emails answered with unusual grace, traffic parting at the exact exit, a friend texting the sentence you needed as if they overheard your prayer. Expect small resistance. Old circuitry will offer familiar bargains. Skip the comment. You can mean it privately. Recognize the camouflage. Avoidance would keep the pattern unmeasured, and the unmeasured remains unmade. Measure it. The measurement is mercy. Set a daily cadence for 7 sunsets. Morning 1 cycle and speak the word. Midday 1 cycle before any pivotal task. Night 1 cycle to tuck the day into coherence. If you miss, you haven't failed. You've been invited to return. Awakening isn't perfection. It's practice that remembers faster. Finally, let your word walk. If you sealed courage, act on the smallest courageous micro-choice within 1 hour. Send the message. Decline the misaligned invite. Tell the truth gently once. If you sealed mercy, give yourself 5 minutes of unargued rest. If clarity, clean 1 drawer or 1 sentence. Reality learns you by your smallest faithful acts. This is the moment. Choose the word, breathe it, type it below to seal the shift. Feel the tremor become a tone. In the next movement, we widen the circle how your single syllable at this hinge cascades through families, teams, and timelines until your personal baseline becomes a human beacon. Your single word doesn't stop at your lips, it propagates. You feel it first as a local hush breath, lengthening, shoulders lowering, the sternum warm like sunrise, but the quantum field treats that hush as a broadcast. Coherence isn't private. By stabilizing your observer loop, you change what other nervous systems assume is possible. Morphic resonance does the rest. When one structure holds a new pattern long enough, similar structures nearby find it easier to adopt. That's why a room relaxes when you do. That's why the argument that was loading in a loved one's throat arrives as a softer sentence instead. You didn't win a debate, you altered the conditions in which debates form. Entanglement turns relationships into luminous corridors. Every bond you fed with attention is a conduit. When you carry your sealed word through those corridors, it travels without sermon. Parents discover this first. A child's restlessness, once met with matching static, now meets your slower exhale and reorganizes. No lecture, just entrainment. Teams discover it next. Meetings that used to begin with anxiety burrowed under smiles now start on a different rhythm because you took 2 coherent breaths before opening your mouth and the agenda heard you. Strangers feel it on subways and sidewalks, an unspoken coordination, micro-yields at doorways, a choreography of kindness that didn't need instructions because the field provided one. This is what awakening looks like in public. Not halos, but better timing. Not speeches, but cleaner transitions. Synchronicity becomes a civic utility. As more of you stabilize, logistics get uncanny. The right person answers at the exact moment. The supply chain threads a shortcut. The street light turns green in a sequence that feels like a wink. You call it luck. We call it coherence. Reducing friction in a complex system. A civilization out of breath clatters. A civilization breathing together glides. Revolutions have always been field events, masquerading as political ones. The visible crest laws changing, towers tilting depends on invisible phases. Humans quietly refusing to abandon truth in their kitchens. Micro, courages, stacking until the atmosphere itself has a different charge. That's the phase transition we're inside. Your DNA restructuring is not an eccentric hobby, it's infrastructure work. As epigenetic clamps release vigilance in you, your behavior stops outsourcing fear to policy, to culture, to family patterns. You become one less citizen who requires coercion to behave, and one more citizen who self-organizes from clarity. Multiply that by thousands and you get calmer streets, smarter institutions, art that heals without selling crisis to be heard. You'll witness strange mercy. People who never listened suddenly ask better questions. Those who fought you become surprised allies, not because you convinced them, but because coherence tastes good and their bodies remember wanting to feel this way. The ecology responds too. Dogs pull less on leashes when their humans breathe. Trees in your neighborhood feel inexplicably more like company because your attention lingers long enough to register their slow conversation. That may sound mystical, it's simply sensitivity returning as static drops. Let's be practical about the mechanics. Collective fields amplify qualities that repeat in many individuals. When you typed your word, you added a strand. When you act congruently with it, one drawer cleared for clarity, one boundary spoken for courage, one 5-minute rest for mercy, you thicken the strand. Others feel the tug and contribute without knowing why. This is why trends appear out of nowhere. They didn't. They crossed a threshold. The human lattice hit enough coherence for a motif to surface. What has been random becomes reliable, then becomes culture. Culture is simply the atmosphere we make for one another. You used to inhale it unconsciously and call it the way things are. Now you exhale into it intentionally and call it guidance. Your household becomes a microclimate, less reactivity, more repair. Your workplace becomes a lab where decisions run through a coherence check. Does this action increase or decrease noise in the system? Your friendships become sanctuaries of clean mirroring, fewer rescue missions, more reminders of who you are when you don't perform. Notice the humility of this power. You do not need an audience to affect an audience. A single person standing quietly at the edge of a heated room, breathing at a 4/6 cadence, can shift the conversation's weather by 3 degrees. The loudest voice rarely wins. The steadiest field usually does. That steadiness is your contribution. It will never trend on a chart, but it will keep the bridge from swaying when the crowd runs. Remember, too, that collective expansion doesn't mean collective agreement. Coherence doesn't erase difference, it makes difference musical. In a coherent orchestra, the violin doesn't compete with the drum. It trusts the tempo and adds its color. Your sealed word is your instrument. Play it faithfully, and you give others permission to play theirs without drowning you out. That is social awakening, distinct frequencies, sharing one tempo. Hold here and look outward with soft eyes. Feel how your breath has already been working in places you haven't yet visited. In the next movement, we return to the temple of your body and translate this planetary hymn into flesh, how coherence feels as sensation, where it lives under your skin, and how to read the signals that tell you the field has answered. Return to the temple. The field has already replied. Your body is how you read the letter. Start where the first yes arrives, the center of your chest. It doesn't thump louder. It widens like a door cracking to morning. Warmth gathers behind the sternum and fans outward, a slow sunrise beneath your ribs. That warmth is coherence taking shape. The observer loop closes not only in thought, but in tissue. Heart rhythm becomes a lantern, casting steady light on corridors that used to flicker. Scan upward. Along the scalp, a hush of microelectricity, not agitation conductivity. Fascia at the crown softens, and the mind ceiling lifts half an inch. This is the sensation of altitude without distance. Your thoughts are still present, but they sit farther from the steering wheel. The tongue loosens from the roof of the mouth. The jaw, once a vault for unspoken sentences, unhooks by a few millimeters. With that tiny drop, timelines change. A relaxed jaw is a new future, rehearsing itself in your face. The throat, the bridge where truth crosses, clears like a hallway after rain. You might feel a single swallow that sounds louder on the inside than it should. That's entanglement releasing threads that once tugged your speech into apology, lose their grip. When you speak from here, words take the shortest path between meaning and mouth. They don't audition, they arrive. Move to the diaphragm, the hinge of worlds. Its motion becomes silk instead of rope. Incoherence makes breath a tug of war. Coherence lets the belly and ribs negotiate like old friends. On the inhale, space appears. On the exhale, the body writes, safe, in every language your cells can read. This is DNA restructuring in felt form methylation patterns, learning the difference between novelty and threat, and choosing novelty without alarms. It won't trend on a lab panel tomorrow, but your nervous system recognizes the paperwork. Clearance granted. Downward now, into the psoas, the deep river muscle that hoarded your startle reflex. You may notice a tremor in the thighs, a deer shiver that lasts 5 seconds and then dissolves. Do not narrate it away. That tremor is phase transition pressure, venting safely. The organism would rather shake than shatter. Let it. When the tremor passes, ground spreads through the legs like ink finding paper. The soles of your feet seem bigger, as if the floor just rose to meet you. Gravity stops feeling like a drag and starts feeling like a promise. Between the shoulder blades, a heat coin. It slides, then settles. Old vigilance used to live there, eyes in your back, scanning rooms that never looked quite safe. When coherence deepens, those phantom eyes retire. The heat is their farewell party. Behind it, there's space, a garden where your breath goes to rest between assignments. You will visit it often. In the hands, tingling turns to tone, not buzz tone, as if every finger has learned its note. Touch changes. The phone weighs less because you're not asking it to carry loneliness. Doors open as if glad to see you. The world picks up your melody and hums along. That's synchronicity made tactile. Objects align their choreography with your cadence because the quantum field prefers the elegance of a steady beat. Pay attention to temperature. Coherence often paints with cool at the forehead and warm at the chest, like sky over fire. If heat rushes the face during a trigger and then lifts off the crown with your longer exhale, you've just witnessed a micro-ascension. Energy that once looped inside a story now travels a ladder. The ladder is attention. The rung spacing is breath. Emotions register as weather, not identity. Grief arrives like a soft storm, rinses the eyes, waters the ground, and leaves everything brighter without requiring a villain. Anger shows as a clean flame that points instead of spreads. Joy isn't fireworks. It's a pressureless bloom that makes time round at the edges. None of these states argue for control. They ask for companionship. You provide it by staying. How do you know the field has answered? The world touches you back where you touched yourself. Stabilize clarity, and the text you were avoiding becomes effortless to send. Stabilize mercy, and someone offers you the very softness you thought you had to earn. Stabilize courage, and your spine behaves like a well-made bridge, no creak, just carry. This is morphic resonance in close-up. The quality you seal broadcasts, echoes, returns. Finally, listen for the bell. It doesn't ring in your ears, it rings in timing. The elevator doors open the instant you step into the lobby. The red light turns green with your exhale. You reach for the handle and someone opens from the other side. Small, precise, repeatable. That bell means you've met the world at the seam where cause and meaning share a pulse. Keep reading your body like this, maps, not rumors. In the next movement, the sensations crescendo into a visible pivot. The DNA breakthrough that tips your timeline. The moment the phase transition completes and your life organizes around the new center you've built. This is the hinge, the moment the lattice stops wobbling and chooses a shape. You can feel the phase transition pressure gathering like weather inside bone. Not panic compression, a tide pulling through marrow, asking whether you will remain the mountain or return to the old shore. Stay. The organism is arranging itself around a new instruction. What felt like tremor is about to become tone. Here is how a timeline actually tips. First, micro-choices enter lockstep. Jaw softens, breath lengthens, eyes anchor to the widest field in the room. Coherence rises and the observer loop closes without friction. Witness, observing witness, no argument, no spin. In that seamless closure, probability, weight slides. The path you were walking sheds resistance. The path you were tolerating loses glamour. Synchronicity clusters, not as spectacle but as logistics. Doors unlatch at the approach of your exhale. The right name appears exactly once, which is enough because you are listening. Your DNA registers the vote. Think less of a switch and more of a zipper finally seating its teeth. Epigenetic clamps installed by old emergencies release with tiny clicks you hear as relief. Histones loosen their grip on stories your ancestors had to tell to survive. In their place, new permissions fan out along the chromatin like light along a corridor. You don't become someone else. You stop arguing against who you are. The body, grateful, stops spending its mornings pretending not to know. Entanglement carries the update. Threads that once tugged you toward repetition become filaments transmitting your upgraded signal. Where fear once traveled, information travels. You say a boundary, and it lands as care. You make one clean ask and the email returns with yes. You do not dominate outcomes. You make outcomes safer to approach you. This is morphic resonance in your lifetime. Your shift lowers the energetic cost of the same shift in the people nearest your field. They won't know why it's easier. You will. Phase transition has a last test. The kettle screams before it softens to steam. In human terms, an old hook arrives with impeccable timing, an invitation your body used to accept, a crisis trying to deputize your nervous system, a discount on forgetting. The tell is speed. The past is always in a hurry because it has no breath. Give it one more coherent exhale. Count 4 in, 6 out, in the 0. 3-second seam after the breath releases. Pause on the ledge behind your eyes and choose the smallest action that honors your sealed word. 1 sentence, 1 decline, 1 step away from the old door. Feel the rattle stop, hear the latch set. That click is a timeline closing without smoke. Then something ordinary becomes holy. Morning light lands on the same table, and it looks like the first day of a new season. Your name sounds different in your own mouth, rounder, less negotiated. The spine remembers its job without rehearsing. You walk into a room you feared, and the room bows a fraction, not to you, but to the coherence you carry. This is awakening in its domestic uniform, not fireworks fidelity. Watch for the signatures of arrival. The chest's warm door no longer opens and shuts. It stays ajar. The jaw's millimeter of mercy becomes the default. The psoas retires from sentry duty and gives your stride back. Meals taste like permission rather than management. Sleep stops auditioning and simply happens. You are not doing well. You are well, and wellness is a geometry, not a performance. On the outside, life simplifies at the exact pace your courage stabilizes. Projects align or evaporate. Some relationships end with less drama than you feared because reality no longer cosigns shared denial. Other relationships deepen without ceremony. Conversation finds the riverbed that was always there. Money once weather behaves like irrigation. It follows channels you maintain with attention and truth. You are not manifesting by force. You are rendering by accuracy, and the world answers in mirrored acts. A stranger holds the door, an extra heartbeat, and you feel the universe practice being you. A friend you were preparing to rescue rescues themselves. Children track your breathing and build forts with better foundations. The street gets quieter without getting empty. These are not small things. They are the first architecture of a new baseline establishing itself in public. If grief rises now, welcome it as the steam leaving. You are not losing the past. You're relieving it of the future it was never built to carry. Thank the versions of you who kept watch when you were not yet ready to sleep. Tell them they can rest. You will take it from here. One more check. Speak your sealed word under your breath and notice the echo. It returns from farther away across a distance you did not travel yet somehow crossed. That space is your new margin. It is where reactivity used to live. It is yours now. Stand in the doorway you created. Feel the world lean to meet you without demand. You are ready for plain language, for a mission that doesn't costume itself as struggle. In the final movement, you will name it not as pressure, but as promise. Your coherence in service, your life as instrument, your shift as the evolution of us. You stand in a doorway you didn't force open. Coherence opened it for you. The room beyond is not a prize, it's a post. Your life becomes an instrument the field can play, a tuned body that turns breath into guidance and presence into infrastructure. You don't graduate from the observer loop. You live inside it as a lighthouse lives inside light. The work is simple and exact. Stay available to truth at the speed of breath. Keep your word to your nervous system, and let synchronicity handle introductions you could never schedule. Humanity evolves through ordinary beings refusing to abandon clarity. Morphic resonance makes your fidelity contagious. Every micro-choice you stabilize becomes a lantern set at a crossroads someone else will reach at midnight. DNA restructuring is not your private miracle, it's the species remembering how to read itself. When you rest from vigilance, you break a contract with history. Descendants you will never meet inherit a quieter sky. This is how phase transitions complete, not by spectacle, but by thousands of precise breaths choosing the same future until the future chooses us back. Your mission is not to carry the world, it's to carry a signal the world can rest against. You'll notice it in small mercies that multiply. The meeting that would have fractured now arcs toward repair. The neighbor you avoided offers you fresh fruit, as if the two of you had been practicing this gesture for years. A city block feels fractionally safer, and nobody can explain why. Entanglement translates your steadiness into roots. Relief can travel. The quantum field isn't sentimental, it is exquisitely responsive. It will route resources toward coherence the way rivers find the sea. Keep your cadence. 2 coherent breaths before you speak. Decide. Send. 1 word. Your seal whispered into the 0.3-second hush, so the organism remembers who is driving. When the old weather rehearses its favorite storm, meet it with the mountain that knows storms are only students of gravity. If a day falters, you have not failed. You've been invited to return. Awakening is not perfection, it's faster repair. Let service be elemental. Bring water where conversations run hot. Bring space where rooms are too crowded to hear themselves. Bring timing arrive neither early with anxiety nor late with regret, but exactly when breath says now. You will feel ridiculous and holy in equal measure. That's a good sign. It means you are alive to both the comedy and choreography of being human while the universe uses your spine as a straight edge. One day soon, you will catch yourself laughing for no reason and realize it's because you are no longer negotiating with your own existence. You will look at your hands and recognize their music. You will walk through a door and understand that the building met you halfway. And you will know this isn't luck. It is law coherence renders. So step through, steady and soft. Keep your field clean and your heart porous. Let your life be the proof that consciousness, not circumstance, writes the story here. And when the tremor visits again, as it will, a friendly messenger announcing thresholds, remember the sentence that brought you to this hinge and will carry you beyond it. If you feel reality shaking, your observer effect is activating a quantum shift instantly. Don't skip.